Welcome to Season 2 of Producer Points. My name is Justin Gamella, and I'll be your host. I'm a producer and songwriter who's had the honor of working with some of the best in the industry. This season, we're diving even deeper into one-on-one conversations with producers, mixers, songwriters, and artists, exploring their unique journeys, creative process, and insights that shape great music. Join me for real talks, straight from the studio, where music and life intersect. This is Producer Points. Welcome to a very special edition of Producer Points. I'm putting this together extremely quickly. I'll cut to the chase. Today on Instagram, I, for some reason, decided to share an email that I sent to Universal Music Group. In it, it expressed my frustration about how long it takes to get paid from these media conglomerates. I'll read it and I'll leave out names and other things of the sorts to protect identities, but just to give this podcast some context. Dear blank, I've been waiting for 2 weeks to have someone sign the contract, with no response. This is on top of months of trying to get it finalized. I know your system is designed to make me wait for as long as possible to get paid, but I cannot wait any longer. Someone get blank or whomever to sign this as soon as possible or put this through. Put this being the payment. Ask whomever you need to on your side to push it through. I don't care, but it shouldn't be this difficult to get paid for something I delivered 5 months ago. All of Universal should be absolutely ashamed how they treat creatives and how many hoops they make us jump through to get the money we deserve in a timely manner when we do our job in a timely manner. Thank you, Justin Gamella. So I posted that email this morning. I thought it might stir up some shenanigans or whatnot, but people really took to it. We all have so many stories. This is just one story of mine that I have from being a producer and songwriter in this music industry for, full-time 10 years. A little bit more background to that story. It's a record that came out. As usual, we had it released before anything was papered and anything was paid. This is unfortunately an industry standard. And more context, I've been emailing with them all day. I did convince them to just pay me without getting the fully signed contract. Now, Universal being Universal and using Uniport, I have to jump through a million more hoops and sign a million more things. And I had to reactivate my Uniport account. For those who don't know, Uniport is the system that Universal Music Group pays to pay out their payees or payers, I don't know, whatever. Because they keep deactivating. And it's something they do too. They just deactivate a thing. I understand if it's been like 5-10 years, but I didn't have a new payment from them for a year or two, and they deactivated the entire account, and then I had a duplicate account, and now because I had a duplicate account, I needed to do something else, and now in order to change the email from the new account, they need to schedule a phone call with me to confirm it. It's all so insane, and it'd be so funny if it wasn't so sad. This is just one of my many stories, like I said. I have plenty of them. I'll probably share them in this podcast. I'm not sure yet. I'm literally, as we speak, getting a ton of stories from friends, listeners, other producers, other songwriters who I haven't met yet. And that's what this episode is about. This episode is going to show those stories. Some people chose to keep their voice in the same. Some people chose to keep their voice anonymous, and I changed it, with that little alter boy or something else. I don't know. We'll see what I'm going to use. But here's this episode. I think it's important. I think we need to share stories like this to call out these absolutely disgusting practices that not only Universal does, they all do it. Universal, Sony, Warner, they all delay payments. It's taken me upwards of 2 or 3 years to get master point payments from these labels. It's a headache, and it's designed to be a headache. It's designed to just wear you out so you don't follow up with them. They're hoping that couple $100 or maybe that $1,000 is not worth it to you. But for them, if that's 100, 200, 5,000 people, that's a lot of money that they get to keep, and they get to keep in their accounts and gain interest on and do whatever they want with it, Make money off of our money, your money. It's disgusting. It's horrible. It needs to stop. With that, I'm going to let you guys listen to some of these stories, and you'll hear from me at the end. Thanks for listening.
So in 2020, I was a songwriter on a song that was released through Ultra Records, not Ultra Publishing, but like the label imprint that is part of Sony. And the song did relatively well, and I had some master points on it. So gave all of our info. We had management and all that stuff handle all the things. And then for a number of years since 2020, no money was getting paid. And I was doing the math, and I didn't want to make a stink over a couple $100s or whatever. I was in a fortunate enough place to not have to worry about a couple $100s. But eventually, over time, they added up, and I wanted to have my money. So I started to reach out to Ultra to find out where my royalties were. Ultra Records didn't really exist anymore. There was the website, there was no contact info. If I went to various LinkedIns, there wasn't anybody really working there. We went through so many different emails just trying to find somebody to work there. And additionally emailed like the Sony royalty desk and got no reply at all. Eventually, between me and my lawyer pushing for it, we did get contact, and they were able to walk us through quite a headache of a process to create the artist, royalty portal. So we made the portal, and it showed that I had a balance of about $500. But when I went to cash out, it wouldn't allow me to cash out. I reached out about this, and they said there was a glitch, but they were solving it. Then the guy who was being very proactive in our case was laid off at the end of last year. So, and he was like, sorry, there's nothing I can do now. Here's some people who can help you. We reached out to all of them. Again, my lawyer reached out to all of them, and we have yet to receive a response. Not only that, I still can't cash out from the app, but last time I went to check the app, I watched in real time as the 500 that it said was my balance, dropped to 250 just randomly, as if it had been paid out or something, and it hasn't. It's not in any of my bank accounts. So the point is, it's a shit show. It shouldn't be this difficult. I've been owed $500 since 2020, so the value of that money has gone down over time as well.
Yeah, this is such an interesting topic of late payments or non-payments or messed up payments from labels and the industry in general. Very recently, I got paid for a top line I wrote 2 years ago, and the song came out about a year ago. It had something to do with contract issues with the instrumental producer. I was kind of nice about it, but I was just like, why should that affect me? Shouldn't that be like a separate contract? Yeah, it's taken that long, and the kicker is it's a top line fee, so it's like $1,500. Why am I waiting almost 2 years for a smaller payment like that? It's kind of crazy.
From a message I received. Thanks for sharing. I've been waiting 11 months already to get paid from RCA. Plus, they released the song I wrote and produced before I signed the contract. It's sick how I've been treated. It's extremely selfish how a label worth hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, can't just pay a few $1,000s at a time to the writers and producers who provide for them.
Thankfully, I haven't had to wait a year for a payment before, but I was on a net 30 with Warner a few years ago. They missed it by a few months, 2 months maybe or so. I was in good contact with the A&R. We had a really good relationship, and he was not getting answers either from his department. After giving him some respect and space, I had my lawyer intervene. My biggest advice is to get a lawyer, especially one that works in the music industry and has connections at different labels.
The last dealing I had was with an artist who is doing very well for themselves. I say this is the last dealing I have because I've turned down all production work since then. Focused on artist stuff solely because it taxed me and I started to fall out of love with music, and I had to rekindle that. This artist had the financial means but just didn't value collaborators. Their management company is one of the biggest in the game. I got to a point where I had the relationship with the manager to be able to get on the phone with them and be like, hey man, like what the fuck? And he said to me, and I'll never forget this, he gave me an example of another producer on their roster because he represents artists and producers. He gave me this instance of a producer who just got the phone call that these 3 songs they had on this major label artist, huge artist, record, they're not going to pay out production fees for it. They can take this like shitty split deal, or they can walk on the songs not being on the record. And he had to call this producer and say, this is the deal we're being given. And he ends that story and says to me, the moral is everyone's getting fucked. It's just when you get to the top, you care less. There's more money to go around, so you don't care that you're getting fucked. I remember thinking to myself, is that what I'm gunning for? Is that the goal? Because that feels bad. The journey to there feels like it'll probably be bad as well. So maybe I get off this road.
So one time I got hit up to do this podcast, and they said it was going to be put on by Sony. They were one of the people funding it. So I said, "Damn, all right." So I was like, "Well, what's up with this budget then?" And it was low. It was on the low end, and I thought, "Damn, for Sony, I think that'd be a lot bigger, anyways." I was like, "Well, fine then. Can I keep the material?" They said, "Nope." And I said, "Okay." I was like, "Shoot, it's you're hungry enough to be, wow, it's my footing with Sony, so this kind of mess it up." So you comply, and then they make you sign the agreement. And I remember it was weird. Why was there so much runaround? You told me to fill out A, B, C, and F, skip to whatever, and so I do that, and then you're like, "Oh, you forgot, blah blah blah." And I said, "But you told me not to fill that out. Why have 2 weeks gone by in this back and forth?" Trying to get paid was the same thing. It was like 2 months. At one moment, I just got so tired. I said, forget it. I don't even want to think about it. I'm going to email somebody and they're going to be like, "Yeah, just fill out this form." It's going to be somebody else's assistant. And it's just like a game. And I said, "Man, I don't get it. This is dark." So I just called the person. I said, "Hey, this has been a long time. It's crazy. I haven't got paid yet. I'm not normally like this, but what's up with these games? Just psyching me out." That was my introduction to like the next level.
Disney, Hulu has a crazy system where you have to be a lawyer to understand any of the things that you're checking off. And then by the time they get back to you, they tell you you checked off the wrong thing. They don't explain what that thing was. They just keep you tied up for months for no reason. But indie artists pay immediately. And especially Canadian artists pay like the next day if they have grant money. Dealing with a record label, you get bigger fees, but it is a nightmare to get paid.
I've dealt with, lengthy waits for royalties and things like that. And I will say that always my first royalty check as a producer, not as a songwriter, is the most hefty. But yeah, you can wait. And if you don't get it, it's painstaking to hire an attorney or to threaten an audit. For any newer producer or maybe somebody that isn't aware, if you are hosting a session at your own studio, meaning that the label is not paying for you to use a studio to work in, you need a 50% recoupment clause in your production agreement, not 100%. And any lawyer on the label side will automatically hit you with 100%. But unless the label has paid for all of the recording costs, you have to insist on a 50% recoupment. That means if you get a 10 grand fee up front for your production, as soon as that song makes 5 grand, you start seeing your royalty. You don't have to wait until it makes the 10 grand. Another thing to understand is if you have a single and they're putting money into videos and marketing budgets and all that, they can sometimes tie that in to the cost and the budget of the song. That song might have to recoup all of those expenses before you start seeing a royalty. So unless it shows up on your royalty statement that you're owed something, that would probably be the reason. I would suggest that any producer that's hosting sessions, using their own equipment, etc., have a 50% recoupment clause in their producer agreements. I hope this is helpful.
From another message I received, the worst part might be that the one way to get them to do what you want, threatening filing a lawsuit, is generally not affordable for even very talented and successful full-time music people. And the highest earning talent tend to get the attention they want from the label, and so they don't need to use the legal system despite being the only ones who can afford it. This is just one of the many things a good union would solve.
First of all, no disrespect to any one of the labels. The systems are all broken, and in my humble opinion, it's rarely ever any one person's fault. At the end of the day, most people that work at labels love music too. I love the labels. They helped me make my career, and I depend on them. That being said, the companies are massive. They move slowly and are constantly in a phase of turnover. It just is what it is. In relation to the flow of money in the music industry being corrupt, of course it is. It's no different than any other industry that's unregulated and attracts wild card figures, frequently with no education and maybe with questionable moral compasses. It always kind of reminded me of an episode of The Sopranos. You think you can build a building in New York City without paying off the union? No. You think you can sell a startup without getting took by the VCs in Silicon Valley? No. You think anyone in finance makes real money without trading on inside information? No. The world at this level is corrupt. Turn on the news. And the music industry is no different. It just feels that way because we're fighting to get our money on products that are close to our heart. We think that because we're trying to get paid on a song where we bare our souls, that it's somehow more important. Maybe to the creators it is, but not to anyone else. The name in the game of this business, again, just in my humble opinion, is don't spend your money because you never know when the next check will come. And when it comes, you don't know how many people will pull from it or what the taxes will be or if that big orange idiot places a tariff on overseas ASCAP statements. Kidding, but not really. Always have your rainy day fund. The business is almost always rainy. And every now and then, if you're lucky and you put in the time, it's really sunny.
I have a song that's 8 months unpaid. I don't know how that story is going to end. It's mostly stuck in legal, closer to the artist's problem than the label's problem. I did find this email chain from a song that's been out now for a few months. We had agreed on terms and started the process of getting paid. Getting them to send a deal took many months. We agreed on terms in February, and they needed verification that the track, they had all the files. That took so long, like getting them the mix stems and everything, even though it was already delivered and done and mastered. It took them so long to get to the point where we sent a deal. I signed the deal right away. And then 1 week later, they said we had some contracting information wrong. So they made me sign another deal. So sign that. No reply to that. So 2 weeks later, I said, hey, checking in. What do we need to sort payment on this one? They said, thanks for checking in. We're waiting on a signed agreement on our end. No reply after that. They said they'd follow up shortly. They never did. But in a couple of weeks, I said, hey, checking out. The song is out now. Looking to get this deal wrapped. They said, following up to try to get a signed copy. This is so the artists can sign it. We'll get back to you shortly. They didn't get back to me shortly. It was Christmas, so my reply after this was about a month. I waited till January. Said, checking in to see if we can get this deal wrapped up. No reply. 2 weeks later, I said, checking in on a signed deal and payment. No reply. We're in February now. The song's been out for a few months. So then I emailed another chain where we were figuring out the deal in the first place. So I followed up. I was like, hey, can I invoice? I don't know if this is someone on the label or the artist team. But luckily they replied and they said, email the invoice to this person. So I emailed that person my invoice, my W-9. They took 10 days to reply. And then they said, do you have an agreement? I replied, in 10 minutes. Here's my deal. The artist never signed, but I was over it. I sent my partially executed deal. They replied that day, thank God. They said, we need you to fill out this W-9 and this royalty registration form. So I replied the next day, attached, here's my license, here's my passport, here's the form signed. No reply. 2 weeks later, I said, can we get this paid out? They said they had to call me to verify everything or something. So I gave them my number. We set up a time to call. We called. From that point on, it actually only took 2 weeks to get paid. It honestly didn't even make me upset. But when I was getting into music, that type of thing made me really upset. Now I just budget for it. So I keep a big savings account and I just expect to have money coming in between 10K and 80K.
So very recently also I had a major sync placement and the company was through. They made it extremely difficult to collect. Like, I swear it's like I was trying to join the CIA or something. Like, it was so much paperwork just to register as a vendor with them. Like 8 months of going back and forth with this person. And now this person is on the thread. And now this one. Yeah, it was like 7 to 8 months to get paid.
Another message I received. The other month I delivered a song that is in the final credits of an indie film. I was told that I would be getting roughly $7,500. The song got released and months went by without payment. Of course, my manager checked in on getting paid only to learn that just before the release, the movie switched labels for the soundtrack without getting my approval. Now, the new label is saying, quote, we didn't agree to pay you that. Nobody is getting paid, end quote. Now we're pulling teeth to get anything. Every day, I inch closer to bailing. I can't financially plan my life when payments can just vanish for labels' convenience.
One of the most screwed up elements of this industry is that you don't get paid to show up on any given day for work. Our whole industry is predicated and built upon the idea that you go and do the work and then you have to advocate after you've done the work for your value or worth, which is always based upon or dependent upon your prior work, not the work that you did in the room. There's no discussing the value of that work. In fact, it's a game of devaluing, or you're advocating for yourself while they're telling you what they think it's actually worth. And one of the biggest problems with that is you have to preserve the relationship with the artist throughout that and not get disheartened by the fact that their representatives are actively trying to tell you you're not worth what you're worth. And then the song comes out, and then you get to start that process of trying to get paid for your work. You've signed paperwork that states you're to be paid by said date for the terms as far as royalties are concerned, but any number of things come in there. If it's a major label artist or any artist on a label, you're now chasing down the label who may or may not give a shit about paying you, or you're chasing down the management or the new management because the artist has changed management 3 times since you did that song. They don't give a shit about you. The crazy thing is that it's in the paperwork. Your lawyer can chime in on CC or whatever and say, hey, we were supposed to be paid by date X. But the whole thing that this industry is predicated upon is that everyone's trying to save face. Everyone's afraid to rock the boat. The power is all in the other person's hands. So you're constantly trying to do this follow-up game, and it's really pathetic. And you start to feel really pathetic, which is not a good feeling to have when your job is to make things.
Recently did a project with RCA and worked on a full EP for an artist. They would not pay me anything up front. They wouldn't even commit to the full album, even though they had committed to the full album through the artist. When it came time for payment, they sent complicated paperwork to fill out that basically had a lot of arbitrary things to check off that they didn't explain. And so I went back and forth with one of their A&Rs for months trying to get it signed correctly. And then that kind of fell by the wayside. Music actually came out. 3 months later, tried to get paid. Took another month and a half for them to actually pay me. That's not the only experience. I had something with Warner that lived in their system for 3 years, and they hadn't paid me. Had to check in with a new set of A&Rs and remind them there was an invoice out. Dealing with Uniport, I had to make a new profile 2 or 3 times because one thing was wrong. I don't understand why it's so difficult to sign in and get paid. It feels like they're trying not to pay us so that they can keep these budgets in an account, making interest for months, if not years.
So I wrote and played guitar, co-produced on a song for a major artist at RCA. They released the song 10, 11 months ago before I signed the contract. They released the song illegally. They didn't have the right to do that yet. And then once we were able to come to an agreement about the fees and splits between the label and everyone who worked on the song, it took so long for them just to fix spelling mistakes in the contract and fix addresses, and they had to get emails after email just bugging them to send a simple contract. That's after releasing the song, before we even signed the contract. Once the contract was signed, no one got paid a penny yet from anything. It's a complicated thing to get paid for a song you wrote and produced sometimes. There's a lot of details that have to be sent over to the right people, and you got to make sure someone's keeping track of everything. For a record label making hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, to not pay a few $1,000s to the people providing what they're making money off is extremely selfish and disgusting and harmful. It's really, really not right.
So a few years ago, I wrote this song with an artist signed to Interscope, and I produced it right before Christmas of that year. I hear from the A&R, and they say, we want to fast track this to put it on the project. Can you send us stems for us to give to the producer who's kind of exec producing the whole thing? And I was like, absolutely, let's do it. We agreed to a fee and a royalty. I sent stems over. Right after the new year, I hear from the A&R, hey, we actually want to punch in this vocal. Can you do this at your studio? I said, totally. We recut some of the vocal, and I asked if we could do a studio fee for my time that day. And the A&R was like, no problem, sounds good. And so I send my invoice in to the label. I don't hear anything. A couple months go by. I'm following up, hey, can we get this going? I finally hear back from business affairs. The A&R is like, hey, what's going on? Why can't we get this paid? The business affairs people go, oh, we can't pay you because you don't have your producer deal in with us. And I said, oh, okay. So I asked the A&R, I go, can we get this going? He's like, totally. He links me with the artist manager. The artist manager loops in the attorney. We are all agreed on terms, and my attorney is going back and forth with them. It's been about 4 months at this point. Still nothing's happening. I reached directly out to the business affairs people. I say, what's going on? Why can't we get this paid? It's been 4 months. They say, we're still working on your deal, but there's no reason to hold up your studio fee. So they pay me for that. Still trying to get this producer deal done with the artist's attorney. They're leaving me on red for months, weeks. I'm following up every week, every 2 weeks. No one is responding to me until finally about 6 months in, the artist manager hits me back and says, the artist is being released from the contract with Interscope. These songs are on ice for now. That was how it ended. They never paid me. They dropped the artist and I never got paid. Hey gang, I just wanted to pop in here to let you know that the best way you can help this podcast grow is to rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. It tells the algorithm to push our show to other listeners so we can grow. And it's one of, if not the best way to help support this podcast. So if you wouldn't mind, take a second to rate this podcast. Sharing it with your friends would be amazing too. All right, back to the pod.
For context, the labels would consider me like a music curator or a music promoter. Whenever a song seemingly goes viral overnight on TikTok or a trend starts, I'm usually the one that the label is paying behind the scenes to kind of get the ball rolling. So one time I was working with a label and they had this urgent song promotion posted the same day, and 12 hours after it was posted, someone from their team DM'd me on Instagram to tell me the label was unhappy with the metrics and I needed to post another video for free to make up for it. I stood my ground and told them you can't gauge the success of a video in 12 hours. Told them they were being ridiculous and said I could either delete the old video and post a new one, or they could pay for a follow-up video. They replied, no, that's fine, thanks. So you basically were just trying to intimidate me into posting content for you for free. Great. It took them 8 months to pay me. The payment terms were like net 30 or net 45. So I sort of waited out the period. And then after that, when I didn't get paid, started following up every few weeks. And they would just keep telling me that they would do it tomorrow, but they never did. It wasn't until 8 months later when I sent a debt collection notice that they paid me within 8 or 9 hours. They had the money and they were just kind of taking me for a ride.
I learned so much mowing lawns as a teenager. I watched my boss pay me early on a Thursday, maybe give me a little bit more to have for the weekend. And so when he called me for some last minute Saturday morning planting job that I had to get up at 5 a.m. for that I wasn't planning on, I was there. You know, he bought me and the other guy who worked with me lunch every time that we mowed lawns. He wasn't making a ton of money, but he was a school teacher. It was a side hustle. It was something he did on Thursday, Fridays, and weekends. And he bought us lunch every time that we showed up. That was the fundamental attitude I brought to when I had a band. And my partner and I, when we were in a position we were able to have crew, or when we had to hire musicians, we would sit down and we would find the most we could pay to take care of people while making it all work. We were lucky to have talented people. We constantly tried to create an experience and make everybody feel appreciated and valued. And because of that, we had dudes like our monitor engineer. He does monitors for Remy Wolf now. He does front of house for Remy Wolf. Our front of house has done front of house for everybody. Fucking Bieber, Foster the People, I don't even remember, Jesse J, tons. Those dudes, if we got together tomorrow, would be there in a heartbeat to do shows with our band for so much less money, but they wouldn't even ask. They literally didn't even ask when we would call them what we had budget-wise. They were just whatever you got at the end. We always took care of people as best as we could. I know we're talking about production here, but you know how many friends I have that were on crews that got undercut or got fucked, and then the artist finds out and is like, I need you to go get my old people back because the B team ain't cutting it. Now management has to pay twice as much. Just take care of people. Value people when they're in front of you doing a great job. Try to hang on to this person. They're fundamental to what we're doing. People don't do that often. At the highest fucking levels, I see this shit. So many of my friends who toured in bands went on to be techs, front of house people, or monitor engineers. I can count the ones on one hand that are valued. or feel valued. It's just a business where you constantly are coming up against new teams and new people where you have to reestablish your value and advocate for yourself. And it is so fucking nauseating.
So I had mixed a song for, at the time, what was a new artist. He had one single out that was doing pretty well. Mixed the song, got approved, and my agreement was my fee and a point on the song. If he was paid, no problem. And so like 2 years go by, and I'm like, this song ended up doing really well, like well into like hundreds of millions of streams. I'm like, I haven't seen any of this money. This is weird. So I'm emailing people at the label, like the people I guess the paperwork to didn't work there anymore. 2 years had gone by. My lawyer did a fantastic job bypassing the A&R network, getting to the accounting department and getting an answer on like, hey, what's the status for these royalties? We finally get an answer. They were like, well, we don't have any, you're not in our like royalty accounting system. And we're like, well, how are we to do that? Like no paperwork was ever sent to us. We signed the agreement and that was the end of the conversation. It took 59 emails to get my name in their system for work that had been long since done. And they had just been holding on to royalties of mine, which I guess at some point they would have absorbed into their system. $27,000 of accrued back-end royalties for points on these songs that they, I guess, were just never going to pay me. I'm thankful to my lawyer for doing his diligence and getting it done. Definitely try to get someone's email in the accounting department and not any of the A&Rs or managers, because they will ignore you, and get to somebody in the more, I guess, traditional business side of the labels, and you have a much better chance of getting some real answers and not getting the runaround.
I've definitely had my fair share of struggles to get paid. One situation that comes to mind is when I mastered a song for this one label, and I charged $100, nothing crazy. I was doing them a solid. When I sent the invoice, they said they operate on a net 90. So it was going to be 3 months before I would get paid. And of course, those 3 months went by and I didn't get paid. I sent them an email, didn't really get a response, kept sending them emails until probably like 5 months after I submitted my invoice. I finally got paid $100 and I was pretty frustrated.
And I want to add to that, make it clear, I did not get paid yet. I did not get paid a penny yet from this. Even to set up a way for me to get paid was not a simple thing. And I don't know how I would have ever known to do it on my own. I'm not with a major publishing company. There's tons of money owed to the creators providing these labels with what they're making their money off. It's so selfish.
Another message I received. My record is 3.5 years. The song was out. The album was out. The song was platinum. The album won a Grammy. Don't get me started. I'm working on one now that is 2 years, and the explanation is the artist never signed a producer agreement, end quote. We can release a song with partially executed agreements, but need fully executed agreements to pay you. Make it make sense.
Okay, label, big indie, probably the biggest indie in the world. Might as well be a major in terms of the bureaucracy is massive. This label gets bought by a major, like their distribution gets bought by Sony or something. During the merger, they held on to my large sync payment as collateral. The indie held it as collateral in like a tax dispute between the indie and the major. It's something that they're having a bitch fest about taxes, and 30,000+ of my money was being held as collateral by the indie. So I noticed it wasn't included in a statement for like a long time, for like a year or so. I had to raise fucking hell. Everyone's pointing fingers. One of the A&Rs that I worked with basically told me, he's like, hey, like the higher ups, like the billionaires in charge are just being jerks. Unless you threaten litigation, I don't know if this money's going to budge. So I told him on the phone, okay, cool, I'm threatening litigation. I had been talking to a litigator about getting involved. The money got released in the next distribution. If anyone has experienced mergers, brace yourself, because the billionaires, like half of the music industry at least, is run by billionaires who just try to hire the least amount of people possible, cut all the corners, not do as much work as possible so they can make all of the money that we generate for them. So not to go full Bernie on you, but that's that story.
Another message I received. Dealing with this right now. So evil and disgusting. No other business operates like this. I dedicated a year of my life to a project and haven't been paid yet. Parentheses, I really need the money since I wasn't able to take on other projects, end parentheses. These people are actually such entitled morons, and their laziness affects our livelihoods when we're the ones working countless sleepless nights to generate product for them.
2020, I survived that year while many struggled because in a weird twist of fate, years of money that was owed to me was paid out just before the pandemic happened. We're talking pretty sizable sync fees, production fees, and royalties that were due to me. I'm going to put the number around $50,000. Now, that was $50,000 that should have been paid to me over the course of 3 to 4 years prior. And fortunately, I do other work and had other stuff, film scoring, whatever, that paid my bills so that I did not have to be dependent upon that money. But it was not lost on me that had I been dependent upon that money, it would have been devastating. That is not a small amount of money. That's a year's salary for a lot of people that live in this city. And I was very lucky that just before the world went upside down, the timing worked out that they paid me. It's crazy, too, because I think about the fact that if they waited just a few more months, they probably wouldn't have.
I think that like an important economic piece that gets missed in this label delay for royalty payments is the fact that, and the obvious one is that when the labels hold on to that money, they're able to put it to work. They can put it in banks, they can put it into assets, and they can accumulate their wealth that way. But I think the other thing that doesn't really make sense in all this, that is extremely frustrating, is that we are pushing up against inflation, especially if it could take years for delayed payments. And we're talking about a nominal return, not a real return. If I was owed $500 in 2020, there's been 20% inflation, around 20% inflation cumulatively from 2020 to 2025. So if they finally get their ducks in a row after years and decide to pay that $500 because it's nominally $500 and not adjusted for inflation to correct for what is ultimately their mistake, that $500 is 20% less effective. Frankly, if it was adjusted for inflation, I should be getting $600 or whatever. That's a big frustrating component to all of this. Anytime there's a delay in payment or somebody's holding on to your money, there is typically some sort of interest evaluation or something that pushes up against the inflation. In this case, there isn't. And so the actual value of the money that you're owed goes down year after year, and they don't adjust for that.
Old publisher, major publisher, sent my quarterly distribution, my payment, to my old bandmate in error, not once, but fucking twice. So there are 2 separate times over the course of like a couple of years. I noticed we'd gotten some syncs and everything. I'd gotten some syncs, and I was expecting, 10 something G's in my account transferred, and it got sent to my old bandmate, and thankfully she passed it along to me. But yeah, the second time it happened was insane. I went, I don't know, full like whatever agent mode, or like that dude from Entourage on the publisher. Then that was wild. That was ridiculous.
Another message. I had another instance where an indie release got picked up by a major label, and the label claimed they had paid us in advance that was not recouped, even though it was paid out of the artist's pocket and that had been recouped prior to signing. The label took months to recognize their mistake and then said it would take until the end of the next quarter to pay out. Around 2 years of delays, all over $400 for their mistake.
You know what's crazy, though, is labels do have the ability to push payment out in a day. One time it happened to me, they messed something up, and we had accounted for an international wire fee for a payment that was on the invoice, and they didn't include it. So my payment was like $30 less. And I was like, hey, you guys didn't actually pay the right amount. And they sent it immediately. And I'm like, how come it took like 2 months for the first one? And the second one, you're like, oh, my bad. I think they intentionally are just holding on to the money as long as they can to collect interest. Why else would they pay at the latest possible moment? It's always like net 60, they pay on day 60. Not always, but very often. They could just pay. So I don't know why we've normalized that.
So here's another example. This is not a late payment. I got this payment pretty much on time, but it was much less than it was supposed to be. So it was like an $11,000 track fee. I received about 7, and I was like, okay, why is it so much lower? Even with the company, like the company that placed it, they had a fee for them. But even with their fee included, it was still like 2K less than it was supposed to be. And even though I really tried to like figure out like, hey, why is this so much less? I couldn't get like a concrete answer at all. Like they didn't provide any tax documents, didn't talk about any kind of withholding. Why did that money not show up? Where is it? Is it a bank fee of $2,000? Like, where is it? So I still don't know. But yeah, these are just the ones from the last year. I'm constantly chasing labels and intermediaries, publishers sometimes. And just to give a perspective, I'm also a content creator. And the worst case delay I've ever had is like 3 months for a brand to pay me. And even that felt like forever. Some brands literally pay me the next day after I finish a video. So yeah, just some food for thought about the music industry.
I'm now in a position where a large portion of my day is spent working for a company where I get to be creative, but I also get to advocate and help musicians, artists, and producers. It has been amazing to see those emails come in that are like, oh my God, thank you so much. Because I know what their other emails look like because I've been in that chair sending those emails. So to get a response and be able to help people, I love that. It's been super rewarding for me. I'm falling in love with making music again. The thing that I've thought about recently that's really sad is people who love music, like the people who actually support this whole ecosystem, the people who spend their money on tickets, streaming services, or merch, those people are being robbed of the thing that they love. Now, music's not going to stop getting made, obviously. People are going to still make music and make art, even if it is the dumbest thing that you can do. Even if this industry gets 150% worse than it is right now, that compulsion to create things, people will always do it. And they will always go down this road. I believe that. If you don't think that changes the landscape of what we're being offered, you're fucking crazy. Now we are in a place where we're being told you have to have so much grit and perseverance to get through all this bullshit. And there already was an immense amount required, but now you have to not only have all that grit and perseverance, but the time and patience to devote yourself to all the non-musical shit. The job itself has gotten so convoluted and insane and so unhealthy and so shitty. And you have to be absolutely out of your mind. And guess what? That person that has that thing is not necessarily the most talented or the most artistic or the best offering. The cream is not rising to the fucking top, in my opinion. I see so much stuff out there that I'm like, this is better than that other thing, but they have the perseverance. I just think it's sad that all this other shit has gotten in the way to such an extent. All this bullshit. And yeah, I just think it's really sad.
Wow. Talk about a cathartic listening session. Some of these are painful to hear. Reminds me of plenty of my own stories that I didn't share on this episode, which I'm sure I'll share in the future. But this is what we're talking about. We all have these stories. It's not these little one-off events. It happens to every single one of us, producers, songwriters, artists, managers, publishers. The system has been designed to behave the way it does. And I want to reiterate, as one of the contributors here said, I don't blame the people who work for these labels. Most of these people are good people. They love music. They want to be involved in it. They want to help create it. But they're tied to this system, and they have jobs that they need to keep, and they have families to support just like we do. And they're in a really tough spot. And I know a lot of them do advocate and try to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen to the creatives they work with. You know, this is on the management side, on the A&R side, on the people who pay out, you know, the people who I sent that email to. I did send an email later to them basically saying, because they have been very helpful. They really have, within context though. But I made sure to tell them like, hey, I'm being a jerk because I hate your system. I don't hate you. I really do appreciate you helping out. And they are trying to fast track this. It looks like it's going to go through in a more timely manner than some of the stories you heard on this podcast today. And I think that only happened because I'm a very upfront and forceful person. I raised some hell in the sense that I called these people out on email to their faces. And I told them what I just said here. Hey, what's the holdup? I have a family to support. This is crazy. I was literally that plain languaged with them. I told them how it was, not behind a manager, not behind a lawyer, but as human to human. And that forced everyone on that thread to step up and try and get me paid. And I'm thankful for all those people that did that. I really, really am. I just hate that now that they helped finalize some things that I have to go through this mega conglomerate, Olympic trials to try and get paid. So listen, Sony, Universal, Warner, Island, all the majors, we want to work with you. We want to make this work, but we just want to be treated like humans. We want to be treated how you would want to be treated. For some of you gentlemen and ladies that are running these labels at the top, would you want your son or daughter or brother or sister to have to jump through all these hoops to get paid? I don't think so. You wouldn't jump through all those hoops to get paid. You're making sure you're getting paid weekly or bi-weekly. I guarantee it. We deserve the same thing. It's 2025. There are so many labels nowadays. I'm going to shout out Monster Cat because I have a lot of experience working with them. Monster Cat is a Canadian indie label. They do a lot of electronic music and whatnot. They have their shit down. I get paid monthly from them. I've never had a problem with getting paid with them. It was all easy and simple and not a hassle. And yes, Universal and all these other companies are dealing with much more music, but you scale it up. This is a smaller company. They have less people, and they invested in a great system, their version of Uniport, to pay out. These companies have the money to do it, but they choose not to, or they choose to make systems that are overly complicated so they can hold on to our money and make money off of our money. It's plain and simple. It is a shameful and absolutely disgusting thing. I could continue to pontificate on this all day and all night, but I'm not going to. I've said my piece today. I'm hoping that by me staying up and putting this podcast together for everyone will wake some people up, maybe make some noise in this industry to help, even if it's one person, get money that they were maybe not going to get because these labels, again, plain language here, suck. So with that, thank you to you guys, to every listener, to every person who supports music. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And take care. Thanks for tuning in to Producer Points. Your support means the world to us. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and share with fellow music enthusiasts. For an encore, check out our Spotify playlist featuring all the songs we've discussed on the show, giving you the perfect soundtrack to your creative journey. Additional audio and video editing for this episode was done by Nathan Rebello. Until next time, this is Justin Gabella.